Hey crafty family, it is me, and today we are going to play with our distress inks, both distress inks and distress oxides, and I'm going to show you some really fun techniques of things you can do to use them together. And I think it's a lot of fun. So I've got some index cards here, and I like using index cards because you could decorate the one side and then use the other side in like journals or, you know, as just for journaling cards, you know, that type of thing. So the thing about the difference between distress inks and distress oxides is that distress oxides are a pigment and dye fusion, but they kind of act more like a pigment than a dye. So that means that they kind of sit on top of the surface, whereas the distress inks are a pure dye ink, and dye, just like any dye would, when you dye clothes or dye anything, it seeps into the surface. So it's going to seep into paper, unless it's gessoed, of course, but you know, but we're just talking about regular paper. It just seeps in. So I'm going to take some distress inks. Let's see. I'm going to do some layering. I wanted yellow and pink. So what we're going to do is put them down on the mat, spray them with some water, and sop them up onto this card to get some fun coverage. Like so. I'm trying to cover it all up. You can go in with your finger and cover up any spots that are not cooperating. But anyway, so there you go. You get some color. And I can use this one to just kind of sop up the rest here. This will be our sop card. And then I can just give it a quick spray and a wipe. And then we've got some awesome color. And what happens is the dye ink, because it's a dye ink and it, you know, it blends so well together, we get not just the pink and not just the yellow, but we've got like a little orange and a coral color going on, different shades kind of mixing together. And I'm going to dry this with the heat gun real quick. The yellow and the pink, the picked raspberry and the mustard seed, are two of my favorite colors in distress ink to mix together because of this kind of reaction you get. So then my other favorite thing to do is to take some water and splat it, either with, you know, you don't have to do it with this type of brush, you could do it with a regular brush, but splat it and let it sit for a second to get what's called like a bleaching effect. Where you kind of bleach out some of the color. The longer you let it sit, the more white you will get, you know, from the background. But I'll just let it sit like that and then sop it up with a rag and see what you get. There must have been something on my rag because I've got obviously this color, which I don't know what the heck that is. Anyway, leave it to my towel to be dirty to give me dirt, but that's okay. So now, the thing with distress ink is, if you want to layer on top of it with another distress ink, you got to be really careful. And there is a way to do it because, like, I know everybody loves the distress oxides because you could just endlessly layer on top of each other and it's awesome. But you can layer on top of this with other colors. But there's a trick to it, and I'm going to show you the trick. Like, let's say we wanted to use festive berries and peacock feathers, and we wanted to layer these colors over top of each other. I'm going to show you how to do it successfully. So you spray them with water, and then you go in, and what you do is have your rag ready, which I'm going to grab this one because it's not as dirty, I guess. Have your rag ready, and you're going to dip it in and then blot it up. Not give it a chance to pick up the color from underneath that we already put on and saturate it and make mud. Okay, so that's the trick to it, is to pick some color up and then blot it dry immediately. So then you get this cool look that the colors kind of sit on top of each other. Now, you still can't like endlessly layer colors. You can go a little bit, which I want to pick up the rest of this with this because I got enough on there because I want to keep some of the undercolor showing through. See, like here I'm not blotting. Now look, we're starting to get a muddy mess because the colors are seeping together. That's what you want to avoid, is this muddy mess. So that's why you blot it as you do it. So if you do that, you can layer more and more, like I'll show you. So now we'll dry this. And then I'm going to splat this with water, because what's going to happen is it'll lift up some of the red and some of the blue that we put on. And if you do it at the right time, you should be able to see the color underneath as well. So you don't want to leave it on for too long. You just want to put it on long enough and blot it up. And that should show some of the colors. You can kind of see, I might have left it on a little long, but still, it still looks really cool. So now we can add another color on. We can do like faded jeans and fired brick. Or how about salty ocean and fire brick? You want to ultimately go from light to dark and not dark to light. That's the best way to layer. So you want to start with your lightest colors and then go darker on top. That's your best bet of things showing up properly. And you want to get a little more sparse as you go if you want to keep the colors showing through. Unlike Distress Oxides, where you can kind of just go for it. There's a kind of a method to the madness here. You want to, like, I didn't use all of the red and the, whatever that color was that I just used. What was it? I don't know. The peacock feathers, I guess it was, and the festive berries. I only did it in spots because, you know, I didn't want to cover the whole thing because that would have covered up. So you only need a little bit of the next two colors because we're just going to do some spots. And again, you're going to pat it up pretty immediately. Because it, you know, especially a color that could easily mix and make a mess, you want to be very careful with. It's very hard to do after you get 2 layers on to go for a 3rd layer, because you run the risk of ruining the whole thing. Like, we're cutting it close here. It still looks good and I don't see any mud. So you just want to be real careful because you don't want to make mud. You want to kind of avoid that. So you want to just be a little strategic. Like, you don't see where there's green. I'm not going to dip it in the red. You know what I mean? I'm going to try not to do that, because then obviously we're going to have problems. But here where it's pink, if you're strategic and you can get in there like that, you can mix it in with the, you know, obviously with the pink, and the blue can go on the blue or the green, you know what I mean? So you just got to be a little strategic about how you do it and you'll be fine. And see, look, you get this really cool, you know, layered effect without making a muddy mess. So that's how you could do that with Distress inks. Very easy. Just be mindful of what colors you use. Be mindful of going from light to dark, and have a rag in your hand. And you can even, like right now, I can even still go back in with some water and give it that cool effect. And this time I'm just going to count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and mop it up so we don't get too much bleaching. And there you got this cool, really cool effect, which looks really neat. I really like this one. That came out really cool. So there you go. You've got like a really cool way to make a layered background with regular Distress ink. So fear not, you can layer. You just need to be a little bit more mindful of what you do, and you can get some really cool colorful effects. So now let's layer with some Distress Oxides and Distress inks together. So that's something you can do. We all know that you can layer Distress inks, but let's do them together. And the best way to do this is to think of, the best way to figure out which one to do first is to think of which one is, how they're going to react with the paper. So if the Distress inks is pigment, and pigment and dye, but acts more like pigment on the paper, whereas it sits on top, this wouldn't be a good idea to start with, because then what's going to happen is if you add something over top that wants to seep into the paper, it's going to seep through the Distress Oxide and cause a funny color, and it might not look as nice. So the best thing to do is to start with the Distress Oxide. So let's do these colors here, the Spice Marmalade and the Fossilized Amber. Or, I mean, sorry, start with the Distress ink. I don't know what I was thinking. And we'll start with these two, the yellow and the pink again. Because these are like, I guess, my lightest colors, I would imagine. I'm trying to think. Do I have a lighter color than that? We could do... Let's do the Tumbled Grass and the yellow so that we're not repeating the same thing. So we're going to start with the Distress, because we want to start with the color. I don't know why I was going to start with the Oxides. Anyway, I'm losing my mind. So we're going to start with the Distress inks and add our first layers onto the paper. And of course, you can get some really cool combinations because these colors go so well together. And it almost turns almost all green, because I probably didn't have enough of the blue. But that's okay, because you got some green, some yellow, some blue. I'm okay with that. Now we're just going to go in and make some more mud here on this one. Because I don't care. This is our mop-up piece. We'll just get some more color on it and call it good. And then we're going to dry this. And now, just for effect, we can splash some water on it and give it some cool effect. And just count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And pat that up. And we got some cool bleaching going on. Now I'm going to dry that a little more. And now we can layer over top of it some Oxides. So let's do the Spice Marmalade and Worn Lipstick over top. This is always fun. I like how the lids of the Oxides actually stay on, whereas the Distress inks, well, this one's going to call me a liar, but they most of the time will fall off. Maybe not. There we go. I guess depending on which one it is, some of them fall off. But the Oxides are made to stay on better, which I like. Alright, now we've got the Oxides, and we're just going to go ahead and throw some of that on there. Not think too much about it. Alright. Oh, I'll put this on here. So now we can dry this. Now, just like, you know, anything, even the Oxides over top of the Distress, you do have to be mindful of what will happen when you re-wet the Distress ink by putting wet Oxide ink over top. So you do have to be careful of that, and sometimes you might get mud still, but you can work with them together, which is really nice. And now that we've got this, I can add some more splashes of ink, because Oxides also react the same way that the regular Distress ink acts, and we can go over it and not let it sit for very long at all and get some cool bleaching plus oxidation going on, because of they both react the same, very similarly. Now, here's the thing, here's where it gets kind of funny. Let's cut this in half, okay, and we will continue to layer oxide inks over the distress ink here, and we will go back to distress inks here. And you can do that as long as you have a light background, even if it's oxides. You can do that as long as you use the blotting method that we used before. So let's say we want to go back to distress inks and do some a little bit of this, what is it, picked raspberry. We can just do a little of that because we're not going to need as much because we got a smaller piece here. But we're just going to go over it and we're going to do some blotting. And you see, as long as it's a color that goes with or will not turn to mud, you can go back over it. And get pretty good results that way. Now let me just pull this on this sop up card here, which we're not really worrying about. So it's turning into a muddy mess. So that's distress ink over top of oxides over top of distress ink. Now here is distress ink with oxides on top, and we're going to continue to layer oxides on top of it. So let's do some cracked pistachio over this one. Now we shouldn't have to do any wiping with this one. And we'll just dry it. And you can even go back in and pick up some more after you've dried it. And I really like the way that's looking. It looks really cool. And again, we can add some water and make some splashies. We like the splashies. And just wait a few seconds. I'm trying to find a dry spot on this rag. And voila, we get some really cool splotchy marks. Let me dry that a little more. And that looks really cool. So here's our two cards. Looking good, looking good. So let's continue with this one here, which let's dry it a little bit and make sure it's dry. Let's continue with some distress ink over this one, and let's do some peacock feather. Now it should be okay, but again, we better have a rag ready to do some lifting up, because we might get some green muddy situations like we are here, because we're putting a teal color over top of some different distress inks and the dyes are melding together. So we just want to be mindful of that as we do, and as long as you sop it up quickly, it won't have a chance to dye through, which is what this does. And it still looks pretty dang cool, if you ask me. Because it still leaves color behind, but it just doesn't activate with the undercolors. So that's all we need of that, because to me that looks pretty good. Going back to my muddy mess here, we'll add these. So, not adding much to it just because we want to keep it so you can see all the colors. So, let's do some of that and sop it up pretty quickly. Look how cool that looks. That's really cool. So again, this is Oxide was the first layer, and then Distress Inks after that. And as long as we're careful with the Distress Inks, we're not having a problem. Now let's go back to our Distress Inks and then all Oxides over top. And we will, maybe now we can switch it up and put like switch them. Put Oxides over this one and Distress over this one and see what happens. So let's find a Distress color that we can use. Let's see, what do we want to use? Maybe we'll put some, maybe we'll use Peacock Feathers over this one too. Or no, you know what? Let's do Faded Jeans over this one. Just a little bit. Because we're going to have to be careful now. And do some sopping. Because even though it's over the Oxides, it's still going to react differently. And so we've got some of this blue in here, which looks pretty cool. Let's try that. And clean that up. And we could put a little bit of water over top of that as well. And give it a second. And you get some more cool looks. So you can go back and forth as long as you're, again, mindful of your colors, keeping a rag in check. And now this one was all Distress ink. Let's go over it with some Oxides. Let's see, what color oxide can we use? Ooh, let's do the violet. Let's dry this a little bit because I feel it's a little damp. All right. Now let's stick some violet over top. We're going to be a little mindful of where we put it. But we don't have to be too mindful because it should sit well over top of the Distress inks. Shouldn't be too bad. Now let's dry it quickly. And that looks really cool. It got somewhat, just starting to get a little muddy right here just because it was purple going over the green Distress. So, you know, that's going to happen sometimes. That's why you got to be mindful of your colors when you're mixing the two together. But I think they both are successful and awesome. Ooh, and let's do some splatting on this one. Some water splats and see what happens. 'Cause that's always a cool look. Yeah, look at that. So, yeah. I think they're both awesome. Can't beat that. Very cool, very easy things to do. Okay, so now something you can do with your either or of these, because they're both water reactive and they're reactive to other ink, is you can take a stencil, and I have this one here, and you can take some ink in a, you know, usually the best way is a contrasting color, and something contrasting to both of these would be the Fired Brick. I'm going to use Fired Brick in the Oxides on both of them. And I'm going to put some on here. I'm going to get a brush. You want one that's kind of soft. I'm going to spray water on this, and then I'm going to sop up the color, and I'm going to stencil. Not, you know, you don't have to do the whole thing. But it's kind of cool, the effect that you get. And obviously, you could plan your colors out a little better so that you're not left with the only thing that's dark enough to go over it, which is Fired Brick. You can go over it with something better. But I wanted it to be a color that I haven't used before. And that's that one there. And you get kind of like a watercolory effect, but it's really cool. And let's do a different color on this one, just because I think we can on this one. Let me clean off my brush. I think we can do a, well, let's do it, since we did that one with Oxides, let's do this one with Distress ink. Because we can do that. We just have to use a darker color than what we've been using. And let's see, let's do it this way. Like this. Okay, let's use this Faded Jeans, right? We haven't used that, correct? Yeah, that sounds like a good color. That'll work. So now we can do the same thing. Oh, don't mind my phone. And it gives you a really cool watercolory effect. It's just something different to do. And you could do it with either your Distress Oxides or... And see, it gives you a very watercolory effect. Obviously, you could go slower and take your time and it won't be as sloppy, but, you know, I like to move fast. You know what I mean? But yeah, you get, see now, this one looks really cool now that it's starting to dry. So let's dry both of these. These would make great backgrounds for ATCs. I mean, these are really cool. I actually really like these a lot. So yeah, see what you could do? Very fun things. You can also, and let's do it with this one, since this is one that I was doing yesterday, or I can't remember. It's got a mix of Oxides and Distress as well. It's not the cleanup print that we were doing before. That one's still over there, but this one here. And another thing you can do, let's do a different stencil. Let's do this chevron pattern. But another cool thing to do is to spray water. And again, it's going to be very watercolory. Let's get a dry towel because I don't want to ruin it. I may not have let it sit long enough, but I hope I did. Maybe I did. I think I did. Yeah, there we go. Let me clean this off real quick. Okay, good enough. Look how cool that looks. You can see, I'm hoping the camera's picking that up, the chevron pattern. Let's dry that. Very cool. So there is 3 different things you can do by mixing together your Oxides and your Distress inks and making some fun things. You could have, you know, left off the stenciling if you wanted to on all these and just had some cool backgrounds that way, or added on stenciling, and either or, do it however you want. But I just thought I would share some fun things to do with your Distress inks and your Distress Oxides together like a happy family. Because that's what they are. They are a happy family. They can work together very well. You just need to be mindful of a few rules that you have to follow when using them together. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you will give it a thumbs up. And make sure that you are subscribed to my channel. And if you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. If you're already subscribed, then hit the bell icon next to the subscribe button to make sure you get notifications of when my new videos and my live streams go up. So this way you're not missing any content whatsoever, which would be horrible if you missed any content. Also, if you haven't already, join my Facebook group, which the link will be in the description below. And my Facebook group is a lot of fun. We have challenges every month and everybody shares their art. You also will find out when I go live by joining that group, because I post links in there directly going to my live streams right before the live streams happen. So you will never miss a beat with that. So, and it's a great group of people in that group. Really, really awesome group of people. So I hope you will join that. And yeah. So anyway, make sure you do what you love and love what you do and be nice to people. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.